video. I am about 3 months postpartum now, and we are all done with our move and finally settled in and kind of getting into a routine. We have been for a little while now, but I've just really been trying to focus on the girls and just getting us settled in and establishing a routine that just really haven't put a lot of effort into making videos or keeping up with my channel, but I'd really like to get back around to it, even if it's just to, you know, keep updated about what's going on with the girls. I am going to do a separate video with baby Keaton and telling you how she's doing. This specific video I wanted to make about our journey kind of with breastfeeding and pumping. And the reason why I want to make this video is because you know, we had kind of a difficult road with breastfeeding, and today we are officially exclusively pumping. And the thing is that there wasn't a whole lot of information on it when I first started researching about it, but the more I look into it, there is quite a few videos on YouTube and even some websites that are devoted to exclusively pumping. But I just wanted to come on here and kind of give a background of how we got to this point and why we decided that's the best decision for us, and just kind of a schedule of what is working for us, and just to maybe give an idea to other people out there who may have issues with breastfeeding and decide to exclusively pump, just to have kind of an idea of how somebody else does it, and that it is possible. It is difficult, but it's definitely possible. So just a little background, we did exclusively breastfeed for the first about 4 to 6 weeks, I'd say. We had some issues on and off with her latch, and you know, I just had some issues with mostly just the left side. For some reason, she just didn't like that side, and we had that issue even in the hospital. We kind of overcame that, but eventually I had a hard time getting in with a lactation consultant where we were at in Texas. I did eventually talk to one over the phone, and she recommended, because of the issues I was having with the cracked and bleeding, and just I was really engorged when my milk first came in, so she recommended that I use a nipple shield. Now, looking back, I don't know if using the nipple shield actually contributed to the problems we would have down the road. I'm sure that some people use it and it works just fine for them and they have no issues coming off of it. And I don't really think that Keaton's issue was specifically needing the nipple shield to nurse. There was many different factors that were going into kind of her relationship with nursing, and just with the move and everything that started causing problems. So really, I mean, there was times that were really great, and then there were times that were really hard. She would go days and weeks with like no real issues with nursing whatsoever, and it was going really well. But at some point close to the move, she started just having times where she would refuse to nurse, or she would just be too sleepy to nurse, and it would be really hard to like keep her awake long enough to nurse. She was gaining weight fine, and so that has never really been an issue for us. She was always getting enough. I had kind of an oversupply in the beginning, and that was causing a lot of problems. I had an overactive letdown, which I also had with Karis. Sorry, hi honey, what's going on? She just woke up from a nap. In the beginning, it was more of an issue of me having an oversupply, her not really wanting to latch to the left side, then her not wanting to stay awake long enough to nurse appropriately. Kind of had those issues on and off, which can be completely normal. I mean, no breastfeeding experience is ever 100% perfect, and I understand that most everybody has some issues at one point or another breastfeeding. But one we actually got down to moving. She just became more and more fussy at the breast, and she would be fine for a few minutes and then she'd pull off and kind of scream, and like almost like she wasn't getting enough milk, or that the flow slowed down, and she wasn't happy with that because she was used to me having an oversupply, whereas I think my body was starting to regulate now more to her needs, but she didn't like when the flow started to slow down. And so, you know, we would go back and forth between trying to use the nipple shield to coerce her to stay latched and keep sucking, because her problem was that she just didn't want to keep sucking. At this point, we were using the bottle every so often, not exclusively. Usually it was just maybe like once in the evenings. I would go ahead and pump and just give her a bottle, just because it was easier for her. It wasn't a fight for her to stay latched and just keep sucking and to actually work at it. Because sometimes she would just be crying to the point where she was like hyperventilating, and it was such a struggle. And you know, I do want to say that for me, like the second time around, it was so important for me to breastfeed, because I did it with Karis up until she was about 7 months, and we had issues as well, but we kind of worked through them. Karis always had a bottle before bed at night of breast milk, but for the most part she was pretty much formula free until she was about 7 months, and we weaned her off because she got her first tooth, and I was having issues with my supply, so that kind of led us to that decision. But this time around, you know, I was just really hoping that maybe I wouldn't have as many issues and that we could have a good breastfeeding relationship. And, you know, my goal was to make it to a year this time if I could. But lo and behold, we had a whole kind of new set of issues with Keaton, and I just, you know, we did everything we possibly could to try and stick with nursing, and it just became more and more aggravating. She would go on nursing strikes for like 24 hours, and then sometimes she wouldn't even want to take the bottle because she would be so upset. I think just in general, I don't know if it was because of the moving and all the time we were spending in the car. We spent a couple weeks at home for Christmas time, so we were staying with family, and it's just, we weren't able to establish a routine really, and I know that babies can sense that, and it was just kind of a difficult time for our family, and unfortunately it really did affect breastfeeding in a negative way. And you know, we tried everything, even to like refusing to give her bottles at all, refusing to use the nipple shield, until eventually she did just latch and she started doing better. And you know, I do want to have a disclaimer. I wasn't starving my child. I mean, she was definitely eating and gaining weight, but as far as the like every 3 hours, you know, sometimes she would skip a feeding here or there if she was, you know, very just hostile towards breastfeeding. And you know, then it seems like we would get past it and she did fine for like an entire week, and then all of a sudden it started again. I did notice though that it was kind of during like the times that my supply was regulated is when she was having problems, and then I'd start pumping a lot because she was like skipping feedings here and there, and so I'd be pumping more to try and maintain my supply. I didn't want my supply to dip, and then I even was taking fenugreek, and so then I would be having an oversupply again. And so it seemed almost like it coincided that whenever I started having an oversupply is when she was happier with nursing, because she could just nurse a lot really quickly, because I had an overactive letdown, and she would get a lot of milk really fast, and then she would be fine, where she didn't really have to work at eliciting a second or third letdown. So we did reach the point where you know, she was just starting the nursing strikes again, and she was starting just being inconsolable, where she would nurse for a few minutes and she would just cry and cry and cry and just refuse to latch back on because she would be so upset. So you know, it just got to the point where we knew that we were going to have to do something differently. And, oh gosh. To the point where I would just be pumping more and more and giving her the bottle more and more because she had to eat, and that was like the easiest solution for us. So overall, she just started getting more used to the bottle, and the more we gave her the bottle, you know, the less she wanted to nurse because it was easier for her, and it was easier for me, and it was less stress on me. And you know, we went and saw a lactation consultant, and we were in her office for 3 hours just to get through one nursing session. And the lactation consultant was able to like calm her enough to where she would relatch using certain techniques, but it was a very long process. And just to be honest, it was a very long process where I don't have, you know, when I have a toddler, I don't have time to make a video on here, as you can see, let alone sit down and be incapacitated for 3 hours trying to nurse my newborn. So, you know, after seeing 2 different lactation consultants, even the lactation consultant said, you know, you've tried everything. I've avoided all the foods that you're supposed to avoid. We've, you know, tried nursing only on one side, block nursing, just doing whatever we could to see like what the issue was. But it was becoming clear that it really wasn't an issue with my supply. It wasn't an issue with anything like that. Food allergies, reflux. She did have a little bit of a tongue tie, but not enough to clip it or that it should be interfering with nursing because I wasn't blistering or anything anymore. It just became clear that it was more of an attitude problem. Like, she just did not want to nurse. She became easily frustrated with having to work for food, especially because we had introduced the bottle kind of early on. With Karis, we never had that problem. She could go back and forth and she had no issues, but Keaton, she just didn't want to do the work. And so that left us to decide whether, if we were going to continue breastfeeding, I would have to start exclusively pumping. I realized that that was going to be a feat of its own, having a toddler and being a stay-at-home mom and being hooked up to a pump several times a day. I didn't like decide instantly to do that, but it kind of just happened. And then the more I researched it, the more confident I felt that I could do it. The lactation consultants were concerned that maybe, you know, a lot of times people start exclusively pumping and then they lose their supply. But the more I researched it, the more I tried to figure out how I could maintain my supply by doing that. For a while, she was sleeping through the night for the most part, but she would wake up once in the middle of the night, and at that point, I was still nursing in the middle of the night because for some reason she didn't have that attitude problem in the middle of the night. And also I had an oversupply because I had gone several hours without nursing, so I was very, very full. So she would be fine with latching in the middle of the night, and she would latch and nurse and go right back to sleep. So eventually she started sleeping completely through the night, and that eliminated nursing altogether, unfortunately. So basically what I do now is I pump 6 times a day, 20 minutes at a time. So that's oh my goodness, 120 minutes a day that I pump. And that has been maintaining my supply, plus also being able to have a little bit extra. I have a schedule. I try to stick very strictly to the schedule, give or take. I try to give myself about 20 minutes. So I set alarms in my phone to go off 6 times a day for when I'm supposed to pump, and I set it usually 20 minutes till the hour. So as long as I can, you know, if I'm in the middle of doing something, laundry, dishes, something with Garrus, and I can't stop immediately, then I, you know, have about 20 minutes leeway before I can like get my pump parts and go and sit down and pump. So I do that about 6 times. I do it 6 times a day. So at my schedule right now, I pump around 7 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 7 o'clock, and 10 o'clock. And then I don't pump at all between 10 and when I get up at 7. Now, I wouldn't recommend doing that right away. Like if you're a first-time mom and you have like a couple-week-old baby and you decide to exclusively pump, I wouldn't recommend only pumping 6 times a day. It was a little bit of a different situation for me because I had kind of already established my milk supply, because we did have, you know, I had been nursing exclusively before then. So, and if I did like miss a nursing session, I would pump. So I was very like mindful of my supply early on, to the point where, you know, we are getting, this has been going on for, it's been at least a month and a half that I've been doing this schedule. And, you know, it works out. Some days it's like I just don't want to pump, but I try and like distract myself, and, you know, sometimes I'll do it hands-free. Like I'll just stick the pump parts like in my bra, and that's why I'm usually wearing like a low-cut shirt for like easy access, so that I don't have to worry about what I'm wearing or pulling something up or taking something off. I just try to make it easy where I can just put it in my bra. It'll stay there and I can have my hands free. If I need to feed the baby, I'll put her in the bouncer and I can feed her at the same time that I'm pumping. Or, you know, I'm just on my phone checking emails, you know, can be on Facebook or read my Kindle or do anything that I need to have my hands for, you know, within a limited space. So, I mean, for 20 minutes I'll be there, and normally I pump about 4 ounces every session except for my morning session. It doesn't seem like a lot, but that's 20 ounces during the day that I pump. And then in the morning, I pump about 10 ounces every morning. You know, it can be from like 8 to 10, but normally it's about 10 ounces that I get every morning. So Keaton still doesn't consume 30 ounces a day. I'd say it's closer to like 21, or sometimes a little less, sometimes a little more. So at this point I have extra, so every couple days I'll be able to freeze anywhere from like 10 to 12 ounces. So I've been able to establish a really good freezer supply so far. I have at least like 2 to 3 weeks worth of breast milk in there right now. So right now, I mean, it's working for us. I have to be very mindful that I'm drinking enough water. I do take fenugreek occasionally, like if I'm noticing a dip in my supply. Also, if I'm noticing like any sort of little dip in my supply, I'll try and pump past the 20 minutes, even if it's just for an extra 2 minutes or an extra 5 minutes, just to stimulate my breasts and make sure that my body knows like, okay, we still need to make milk, because I am going a long time at night without pumping or nursing. So, but it seems like my supply has been pretty well established, so that like the longer I go without pumping, I just end up pumping more in that time frame. I feel like my body makes around an ounce an hour, give or take. So that's kind of just how it is right now. And that's what's working for us. Keaton uses the Advent Natural bottles, which I had purchased before she was born, because I figured, you know, at some point she was going to get a bottle of breast milk, and it's supposed to be the most natural or very similar to the breast. But as you can see, that didn't work out so well for us as far as her being able to go back and forth. So she is bottle fed, but she is getting breast milk exclusively. We don't supplement with formula at all. I'm trying to do this in baby steps because I realize that it is a lot and it's hard. I did get an adapter for my car, so if I have to go on long road trips that I'm able to pump in the car, or if I just know we're going to be away from the house on the weekend more than 3 hours, then I bring it with me so I can do that in the car. It is a lot of bottle washing, washing the pump parts, things like that. And if you have any questions, like specific questions on my routine or what I use to wash the pump parts, my drying rack and all that stuff, I can do another video and include, you know, all the products that I use that make my life a lot easier. But yeah, I mean, it's going well, and as far as my goal, like, I would like to at least make it to 6 months, and she'll be 4 months in another 2 weeks, and so we're almost there. I'd love to make it to a year, but I'm not gonna put that pressure on myself. I'm gonna make it to 6 months and then see where we're at, and if I can keep going, I'm gonna keep going. I would like to eventually be able to maybe drop a pump session somehow, like during the day, maybe go like every 4 hours instead of every 3 hours, and see how that affects my supply. If it drops my supply just a little bit, I'm not too worried, because right now I am pumping more than she needs. When she starts drinking more, you know, I have the freezer supply, so I'm not too worried about having to supplement here and there with milk from my freezer stash. So that is what we're doing right now, and that's what's working for us. And like I said, I know that it was hard for me to make this decision. It was very emotional. I mean, if I dealt with any postpartum issues, this issue with breastfeeding and making the decision to exclusively pump was one of the hardest decisions. I mean, your whole life is based off of how you feed your infant in these early, you know, months, because that's all they do is they eat and they sleep and they poop, and, you know, just feeding, how you decide to feed your child is such an important issue. And I'm so passionate about breastfeeding, and it does make me very sad that we didn't end up getting to have the experience that I wanted per se. But I know that I'm less stressed. I know Keaton is less stressed. She's very happy and very healthy. We don't have issues with colic anymore, and you know, things are just going really well, and we're used to the routine and we're adjusting fine. So it was a big decision, and it was a very emotional decision. I spent way too many nights crying and stressing over this, but you know, it is what it is, and every baby's different. And you know, I'm sure some people will say, oh, you didn't try hard enough to breastfeed. Well, I know in my heart that I did. I know that I did everything that I could to try and convince Keaton that breastfeeding was the way to go for us, but she just wasn't having it. And you know, unfortunately, I don't know what else we could have done. You know, maybe we could have worked harder at it and just refused to give her a bottle, but you know, to me it was more important that my baby was healthy, happy, and fed. And I have another daughter that I have to think about, not only Keaton. So this is the decision that we came to that was best for our family as a whole, and it still is a lot of work, because you know, unlike breastfeeding, you just put the baby to the breast, you breastfeed, you're done. I have to pump, and then I still have to feed my baby, so it's like always constantly on my mind. I mean, from the minute I wake up to the minute I go to bed, it is a full-time job to do this. So I just want anybody who does make this decision to know that it's not always easy, and it is a big commitment, but it's totally worth it to me and for our family. I mean, I know that my baby's getting the best, you know, by still being able to have my breast milk, even though breastfeeding, you know, on the breast didn't work for us. So this is the next best decision for us. So I just wanted to encourage anybody out there who might be having issues with breastfeeding and is considering exclusively pumping, you know, just to message me with any questions or post a comment below, and I'd love to answer them and just to support you, because I know that sometimes I feel like I need more support doing this. It's hard to find a big community of people who are exclusively pumping, and you know, it's hard to answer that question, like, does your baby breastfeed, or are you breastfeeding, are you nursing? Well, technically, no, I'm not nursing, but if somebody asks me if I am breastfeeding, I say yes, because, I mean, she is getting milk from the breast, and, you know, whatever vessel I'm using to get, you know, have her eat, you know, whether it's from the bottle or from the breast, she's still getting breast milk. So to me, she's still a breastfed baby, obviously. So I don't feel any shame, or, you know, I've kind of let go of having to explain, like, yes, she's breastfed, but she gets a bottle. Like, I don't go into that. If somebody asks, I'll just say, yes, you know, she's breastfed. Or, is she still nursing? Yeah, she's breastfed. Like, I don't feel like I need to explain myself to everybody. If it's somebody close to me who, you know, I feel okay, like, going into the details, then I will. But, you know, for the most part, I'm fine and confident with our decision, and it really wasn't an easy one, and it's something I'm very passionate about, so that's why I wanted to make this video. First and foremost, just to see if I can reach out to anybody else who's having issues, and or just maybe get support from anybody else who has also exclusively pumped for X amount of time. I mean, it is a lot of work, but we can do it. So yeah, that's pretty much it for now for our breastfeeding update, and I'm gonna make another video here shortly to update on how Keaton's doing and how we're adjusting as a family. So I hope you all take care, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.